Welcome back to Outspoken, the show where we diagnose culture, dissect narratives, and occasionally offend the algorithm.
And today we're throwing it back, like way back, to Aqua Net hairspray, Walkmans, and shoulder pads. You remember those. But not just for fashion. We're talking about the way women were treated in the 1980s and how it compares to chaos we call modern dating today.
We're calling this one Breakfast Club to Bumble, Why Chivalry Left the Chat. Because somewhere between mixtape and swipe culture, something real got lost. Let's get into it. All right, well, before we get started, make sure and smash that like button, subscribe to Outspoken, and share the show with everyone you know. Hit the bell icon to get updated whenever we upload a new episode. All right, Joe, here we go again with another interesting one.
I would say so. You know, people might say, you guys always talk about the 80s. Well, we love the 80s. And if you haven't noticed, you know, we're big 80s fans. You know, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, The Goonies, just all these great things happen in the 80s. But there's more to it than just movies and music and everything else that we talked about. We're talking about men. Let's paint the picture. It's the 80s, right? Men were expected to be what? Guess what? Get men. Right? They expect to be men, right? Open doors.
Surprise.
Yeah, right? Big shocker. What's a man? Anyway, open doors, pay for dinner, call, not just text, you know, effort. Put a little effort into.
Well, we didn't really have texting back then, so I think that was a given, right?
Well, you're right. In today's world, though, we do have texting, and it seems that we outdo ourselves in texting instead of making a phone call. Like, for example, if you're going to break up with a chick, you're not going to call. You're not going to go face-to-face to her house and talk to her. Now I get a text her. You know what?
It ain't working out.
It ain't working out.
I'm not that interested.
I'm not that into you, man. But so, you know, was our system perfect? Of course not. But there was a baseline of honor, even if it was clumsy, right? You see it in movies, Pretty in Pink. Right? We just talked about some of this. Say Anything, 16 Candles, and it goes on and on. Guys, we didn't ghost girls, bro. That thing wasn't even a term. I don't even know when that term started, ghosting. But they stood outside your windows with a boombox. Remember that one? But that was, man, that's how we did that, you know? And today would probably be labeled as toxic. Now toxic is a word. And not just for men, but for women. But back then, man, we had a romantic commitment to women. There was a cultural understanding that women deserved pursuit. Like we'd give chase to women. And that wasn't oppressive. It was respectful. And that's how it was viewed. But, you know, but now thinking about it, it kind of works both ways. You know, women now are different and so are men. So did men become less men because of the women or what? What's your take on that? You know, it's hard to assess, to be honest with you, because now women today are independent. I could do it. I don't need a man. You've seen them videos on social media, right? But then when it comes to their car breaking down or a tire needing change, they're like, Dad, where are you? Right? The reality of things is that we have progressed in some areas of society, but it seems that in the area of being a man and woman being a woman, we've lost that chivalry of a man where, you know, we open doors, we say thank you, we say no ma'am, yes ma'am, because we're so afraid to offend somebody. I don't identify as a ma'am, or I don't identify as a sir, you know.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if people are allowed to tell you to dictate, hey, you're gonna identify me as a person that I want to be identified as, then guess what? You're gonna let me be respectful, like the way I was raised. You know what I mean? So it's give and take. It's almost like men are stuck between a rock and a hard place. I don't even
because
know.
if you're not nice, they don't like you, and if you're too nice, you become, you know, this toxic masculine figure, right? Because you're opening doors and stuff like that. What do you think? I can't open a door by myself? That's not an offensive thing.
No.
Maybe you as an individual is offended by that because you think you've been taught by this new feminist culture that it's created all of this, but it's actually not something bad to open a door for somebody that's older than you, somebody that's a female, little kids. I tell you, bro, one of the things that I try to do as much as possible is when I see like young kids and they open a door for me, or, you know, I see them doing it for a female, man, I praise them so much. I'm like, hey, great job. Because it's so rare nowadays. The amount of times I see these young boys and they have like girlfriends with them or young girls with them, and the boys will walk in, open the door, they're talking to each other and they just let the door slam in, in the girls' faces. It seems really weird to me. So, over time, the 80s is when it kind of started, right?
Yeah.
And into the 90s is when things really got stupid. And now into the 2000s is when it just became really ridiculous, where we're looking at it now going, what the heck happened? So one of the things, you and I remember this when we were young because we went to Pirates of the Caribbean in our high school years, right? And there was a couple different scenes in there that were very famous. One of the scenes was there's an auction, and there was a guy auctioning off women, right? He was auctioning off the winches or whatever.
Wenches.
And yeah, the winches. And they were going up the stairs or whatever. And you got to imagine this is depicting pirate days, right? It's not depicting 2025. It's depicting back in that era. And they changed that. Before that, right, they had the scenes where the guys were chasing the women around, right? They were going in circles.
Yeah.
And that in 1997, they changed that to where the women are holding food. So it's like they're chasing them holding food. And then they changed it again where they have women chasing men and all,
Why? Because did the obese men complain? I don't always chase food.
The thing is, it's really silly. This is something that was very innocent at Disneyland. They were funny scenes. They weren't meant to offend anybody. I guarantee you Walt Disney was not trying to offend people when the Imagineers came up with all that stuff. But even Disney was under fire for it. And sadly, they're one of the companies that has become the forefront of the woke culture and the feminist movement and all this kind of stuff. There are women nowadays that look back on that time and they're like, hey, who the heck started the feminist movement? Because I want to beat them with the stick, right? Because now we have to work. We're working 40 hours a week. And if you think about it, if you go back in time, there was a big deal with that, right? Women couldn't vote. Why couldn't women vote? Well, because women were in the household with the man. So there was one vote per household. And if they were giving that vote away, they weren't giving it to the wife. They weren't giving it to the kids. They gave it to the man. What was the number one reason that the vote was given to the man? Well, because he's the one that he's going to vote for
He's the one that's watching the family. So he's going to vote for the best candidate that's going to
well,
bring.
he also is voting for a guy that potentially will send him off to war.
Yeah.
Now, why is the woman going to vote for somebody that could potentially send you off to war?
Yeah.
Right. So you want to look at the candidate that's going to best serve you and your family.
Correct.
And again, the man was supposed to look after the family. Now, I'm not saying that we haven't progressed and done some great things and having women working, but I'm trying to explain the history of all this. Then the next thing that looked really good to the people in the upper echelon was, okay, so we would say the country is mixed, 50-50, right? 50% male, 50% female. Forget about race, religion, anything else, just male and female. If at that time a household was a man and a woman, just like you started at the beginning of this, they only taxed the man, right? Whoever was the landowner, that's all they taxed. The woman didn't get taxed. So what did some greedy people think about? They're like, man, wouldn't it be great if we could double our taxes and tax both parties of the household? Yeah. So let's have them start working. Well, let's make them feel like they're oppressed and they don't get to go out and work and stuff like that. And let's make them actually feel like working would be a freedom to them. And so this is how all this stuff's come about. And it's just been a snowball roller coaster of things that we have told women that you're so oppressed. And we do this to a bunch of different groups. Think about all the groups that cry oppression nowadays, right? They're walking around being oppressed with their picket sign, their $1,000 phone, and their $12 latte in their hand. Oppression is kind of a non-starter in the United States. It kind of doesn't exist. All of these things have got us to where we are now, where men, especially younger men, you and I don't care. We'll hold a door open for somebody if some kooky, cat lady says, well, what do you think? I don't have arms or whatever. It's like, I don't care what you think. I'm going to hold it open for you because it's the right thing to do. And we talked about this earlier off screen, and it was about some of the stuff in the Bible in Corinthians, right? About the main thing that we're supposed to do is love other people. We're supposed to be nice to people and be good to others. And it seems like culture has completely went backwards on that, right? You want to complain about everybody as much as possible. Make sure that you're never satisfied with whatever anybody does, and if they're trying to be nice to you or anything like that. So it's really created a divide between men and women. And it's, again, our young men are done with dating, right? They're going to get into the women that are easy, right? Get in and out. I know that's horrible to say that, but they're going to get into the relationship and it's not going to be relationship and they're just going to get right back out of it. What incentive is there for a guy to have anything to do with a solid relationship? And so with that being said, why is a guy going to fight his way through doing all the basic things and being a good guy?
So you've hit on a couple of points. So moving forward, let's go fast forward to the 90s and 2000s. You mentioned 1000. Feminism 2.0 hits, right? In the words of equality. And the message shifts. I don't need a man, right? You mentioned that earlier. I could open my own doors, blah, blah, blah. Fine. Yes, you can. But now men are terrified to try. Now you've put this stigma over it and like, oh, I don't want to be disrespectful or create you any heartache, right? So we traded respectful masculinity for fearful passivity, right? And men unsure of the rules, we just checked out. We're like, I'm not even going to try because I don't know what the dangers are here. So why try if we're labeled a misogynist for offering your coat, right? Like we don't do that anymore. I remember back days watching old black and white movies where men would take their jackets off, put them over a puddle of water running down New York City, and the woman would step on it and walk over it. So what started as a push for equality, which we can't hear enough of, turned into a rejection of everything that made male care visible, right? We're just so frightened about it. And women, well, they're tired, right? Empowered maybe, but exhausted. So that's the problem that we're seeing today, is that that culture, the one that's driving now today, that equality has just driven men to the point where they just checked out. We're done. We don't want to, we don't want to deal with it. It seems like it's too much work to even hassle with it. Today's dating culture, we have so many things that were unheard of back then. Ghosting, games, and of course, no guards. It's gone to a point or to a level again where now you have men, especially now with AI being so prevalent, you have men having relationships with their computers. Right?
Yeah.
Because they'd rather stay home, not deal with the stresses of dating. And probably women are doing the same thing. And then, of course, you have those robotic, or not even robotic, man. They're just posable dolls that people buy from overseas, right? It's just weird stuff. So let's talk about dating, right?
Yeah.
Apps, DMs, hey, texts at 2 a.m. Come on, man. As a man, as a guy, I'm going to tell you, I've sent those hey texts at 2 a.m, right? Coming out of the bar, you close it down, you're like, hey, what's up, girl? You know what I mean? We've gone from, do you want to go steady, to what are we? You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing here? Nothing. We're nothing. That's what it is. We're absolutely nothing. We've come to a point where we're just hanging out. One hits wonders, like we used to call those songs one back in the days in the 80s, right? It's all the vibes and situationships, right? Women aren't being pursued. They're being scrolled past or swiped on like products. Remember, we talked about this in one of our episodes where, swipe left, baby.
It's a swipe culture. I mean, that's what we've called it.
And yeah, exactly. So men have lost purpose. Women have lost protection, and both are pretending to do this in the name of progress, right? Which we all know is BS, because it's gotten us nowhere. In fact, we are more socially awkward than ever before. We are so distant from each other. We don't even know how to communicate. Of course, 2020 didn't help with COVID and isolating us even more. So we have no way to get back to what we were. We've removed responsibility and labeled it freedom, right? Because we're all free now, all of a sudden. But what we really did was remove care, real, intentional, sacrificial care. All that is gone. All that is gone because we don't know how to act, because we've gotten into this culture where it's a me culture, right? It's a swipe left culture. It's a what are we culture. It's just so many things in one, but one thing it's not is chivalry. We no longer have that. Women don't recognize it. Men don't do it. But what was it? What was it? What was it that you saw your grandparents do, your parents do? So let's be clear about it, right? Chivalry was never about control, which people now, in the name of progress, they want to say, oh, that was just a man being controlling. It was about honor. There's a big difference. There's a fine line, right? Yeah. It's about treating a woman like someone worth protecting, not because she's weak. We never say women are weak, but because she's valuable to us. A lot of people say this, well, when we look at a woman as our moms. No, we don't. You are as valuable to us as a mother, right? Because in your time, and if not then, if not now, you will be a mother. So exactly, holding a door didn't mean she couldn't. It meant you chose to honor her time and her presence, right? And honestly, women still want that, bro. They just don't want to say it. They just don't feel allowed to ask because, now we're two different cultures. You know, the men are less masculine and more feminine, and the women are more masculine and less feminine. You know, and it's just weird kind of vibe that's happening. And men still want to lead, but they've been told that's oppressive. You can't open the door because I could open my own door. I can't. That initiative is aggression. Everybody's confused. So what do we do? Like, do we just, if a girl's getting robbed, you're like, girl, hold your own. I'm sure you told me that you were 4 years old. You took Taekwondo. You got it. I'll be right here waiting. You know what I mean? Protect me. Back then, the guy could have weighed a $120, bro. And if his girl was getting harassed, he'd jump in there regardless, knowing he's gonna get beat. He didn't care. Yeah. He didn't care. So where did we go? Where do we lose this stuff? You know? And I blame this woke culture, this progression, this diversity. All these things are all key to how we've lost sight of what's healthy. You know what I mean? Because now everything's viewed as being oppressed. Everyone is oppressed for some reason. You know, like everything's an oppression. You know, like you can't park there because you're oppressing me because I have a smaller car and it's electric. You know what I mean? Like you can't do anything, bro. You know? All of a sudden we're oppressing Bud Light because it's a light beer and we shouldn't be drinking like heavy beer. I don't know, bro. It's just everything offends everybody.
Yeah.
Honestly, man, I've gone to the point where I just don't care anymore. If it offends you, then, find something to not be offended, I guess. You know what I mean? I don't know.
There was a reverence for women at one time. I remember going to my grandparents' house.
They were revered.
And when my grandmother would come to sit, so she was the last one to sit at the table because she was busy cooking and setting the table and doing all that kind of stuff. That would be looked at nowadays. You would look at it and say, well, gosh, she was basically the family slave, right? Because she had to cook and do all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But she wanted to cook and she wanted to do these things. Now, I already know people on the other side are like, no, she would have rather been free and doing other stuff. Here's the key. When she would come to sit down at the table, guess who would stand up? Grandpa would.
Yeah.
Right? And he had a love for her beyond anything. And if you go back in time, that's what happened. When women came to the table, a lot of times if men were having to be at the table and talk about wartime stuff and everything, and it was only men, when they sat at a table, what did they do when women came to it? They would always stand up to allow her to sit down. They would push her chair in, right? That's something that doesn't happen anymore either at a restaurant, especially nice restaurants. It's just something that's a given that you should be doing. Even say
I've never did that with my ex-wife because I didn't know how to do it, because once you sat on it, it was kind of heavy to slide, bro. So I tried, but I didn't know the key behind it, I guess.
Dang it. So you're supposed to be sliding it while they're setting, so but don't slide it backwards because they fall.
I don't know these things, bro. There's no school.
There's no school for it, right? And that's the thing, is that I think we lost a lot of that stuff, man, because there used to be etiquette training and stuff like that in schools, and there stopped being that. There started being all these other things, and we've talked about this before. Like, they don't do driver's ed in school anymore. What did they replace that with? It wasn't more math. It wasn't more history. It wasn't more English, because kids are coming out of school stupider than they ever have. So what did they replace that with? Probably some dumb stuff that we're talking about right now.
Trans care.
Yeah, probably something like that. And I hate to even step back to these guys again, but because they're such a big cultural icon, there was a time that whole movement of nonsense was made fun of in a movie, and it was called Finding Nemo. And there was these big sharks. And what did the sharks do? Fish are friends, not food. Remember that? So that whole scene there, they were trying to take sharks that eat other fish and trying to turn them into these little wimpy, and they were making fun of it. They were making light of it. And they were trying to make sharks be these wimpy things that were going to be friends with all the little damselfish and everything. And they were making light of it and making fun of it, but they were also predicting the future of what they were the direction they were going to go with everything. And that's what they're doing now. They're making men that are supposed to be sharks in the world, they're making them into damselfish, dude. They're making guys be weaker and less attractive to women, right? And that's the thing, is now women look at, when you see the interviews and stuff they have, they go, well, he can't have me, and he's not worth, what do they say, he ain't, and it's like, well, why do you think that is? And I mean, we are in the midst of what? Men's Mental Health Month. We're right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And how much have you heard about it? Now, of course, there's all this stuff going on with the Middle East and everything else, but it's probably one of the, it's also, isn't it like something with Pride Month and stuff too? So, I mean, you know, it kind of everything takes precedence over dude's mental health, period. And there's you know, a lot of guys out there that are just, they've checked out and they're done, and they just go to work every day and they come home and then they start all over again. That's it. And it's really,
and I think you're right, because I think the pendulum is starting to swing back, you know, and I say this because with so much stuff coming out, people are starting to take their control back to, they're trying to take their lives back in control instead of having it run by social media or by trends that are happening, things like that. So you're seeing a lot of women returning back to homemaking, right? You're seeing men wanting to build families and not just follow trends anymore, right? People are realizing that empowerment without love is just loneliness with lipstick, right? Women don't want control. They want care. They want someone who's going to look after them, who's going to empower them, right? And guess what? That starts with men learning how to show up again. And you mentioned that earlier. We need to show up with respect again, with strength, and yes, some chivalry, because we've lost it. Not because maybe we chose not to, but maybe because we're afraid of the reaction or how society will see us, or are we, like the term people like to use, are we showing toxic masculinity, you know, because I open a door or because I ask you if you're okay or things like that, because that's something that, you know, men to men we don't do, but to a woman that should be totally something different, right? I think it's time that men need to bring back that boombox, right? We're not just saying rewind the clock. We're saying recover what was good, because trying not to need each other, man, we've created a culture where no one knows how to love, bro. Like, you see it every day in the world, man. People don't love each other. People are so ready to attack each other, whether it's for politics, whether it's for beliefs in sexuality. It doesn't matter. We're like on the verge of just being angry all the time. People walking around just mad about existing. You know, I've seen this one thing on social media, and not to talk bad about people, but this chick, I swear, was no less than maybe 300-400 pounds, and she goes back to McDonald's and throws the food because they got the instead of large fries, they gave her medium fries, and they forgot a Big Mac. I don't know. Like, I'm thinking, baby Jesus, help this woman realize she probably didn't need them. You know what I mean? But no. She's fighting for her rights, but that's the kind of culture we have now. So let's get away from that. Let's start loving people and respecting people. Let's bring back pursuit, the intentionality, right? The honor. Not because women can't take care of themselves. We know they can. They've proven it time and time again. If a woman could pop out these kids, bro, she could take care of herself. Trust me. But because they shouldn't have to do it all alone. That's why we're here. For us to help, to pick up that burden, to remove some of that burden. Because I'm going to tell you right now, man, I've seen the birth of all my children. And that's something I would never, ever trade for anything. I'm happy I'm a man. I would never want to be anything but a man. Sometimes, you know, when I eat spicy food, I have a hard time in the bathroom. I can imagine popping out a child that's about 6-7 pounds. You know what I mean? It ain't happening. All right. So we have to understand that women, once in a while, let a man be a man. Let him help you. Let him, you know, we got to stop this, man. We got to stop this ghosting. We got to stop and start guarding our women, protecting our women, because chivalry didn't die. It was just shamed into silence because of all these equality and diversion and diversity and all this crap, all this anti-humanity stuff put people into silence, right? Because they were ashamed because they didn't want to be called a misogynistic pig, or they didn't want to be toxic. They didn't want any of these names that women are so quick to throw at men, because they think that by asking them, "Hey, do you want my coat?" What do you think? What, you think I'm cold? Do you think I can't afford my own coat? Like, everything's a challenge, and we need to get away from that. Women, you need to understand that men don't look at you as a weaker sex, but we revere you. We look at you with respect, with honor, knowing that you do a lot for us in society, and we just want to honor that by being gentlemen. I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. I think
no, not at all.
We should show that to women, and I think women, Jay, if you think I'm wrong, I think women should be willing to accept that and not think of themselves as a step under man because a man offers. A man is doing it because he's a gentleman, because he wants to put less of a burden on you. and more on him, because the man is the one that leads the family. And when I say lead, doesn't mean that you have no say in it, but the man leads the family because he makes those hard decisions. He makes those sacrifices so that his wife and his children have the things that maybe he didn't have, or things that you didn't have. There's just so much behind it that men, and you know this, and this is probably another episode we'll talk about, men don't talk about what's going on in their head. Men just do. Men don't think about, like,
Right.
I'm tired, I'm stressed out. They don't have time for that. They just do. And when men do, then you got to watch out, man, because we'll turn the world upside down for a woman that shows love and respect in turn. Women, you have to stop feeling like we're oppressing you because we want to help you, because we want to guard you, we want to protect you, we want you shine. A man is happy taking the back seat when it comes to popularity. As long as he knows that in your heart and in the heart of his children, he's the number one, he doesn't care what the world thinks of him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And we got to kind of get back to that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I wanted to leave with a couple different things here. One was, I don't know if you heard, it was like last week, there was a guy that man falls for AI chatbot that he created, and he proposes while his partner looks on in disbelief. So imagine how devastating it would be to have a chatbot tell you that the relationship isn't working out and they're going to have to end it. Thinking about AI has gotten that good to steal you away from somebody.
Dude, that's crazy.
So this is the last thing I want to say. So there's this old joke back in the day. Guy's at his house, and his buddy's coming over, and his buddy walks in the house, and they go in the kitchen to grab some beers or whatever. And his buddy looks and he goes, "Hey man, where's your dishwasher at?" He goes, "I don't know. I think she's in the bathroom." So the reason I tell that joke, I hope.
Are you going to edit that out? Are you going to edit that out?
No, I'm leaving it in. So I hope some people got upset at it. It was made to make women's life simpler, right? Because men were sick of seeing their women working hard, right? Because what do we not like? We don't want to see our women having to do a lot of work. And they were tired of their women complaining to them. So everything, if you think about it, in a guy's life as he goes on, if she says, because there's a joke, they made a whole show about it, Tim the Tool Man, right? That he would fix everything for his wife and he never fixed it, right? And that's a running joke for men and women. Oh, I told him he's got all these projects and stuff. Why does he have projects? Because you want him to do a bunch of stuff, because he doesn't, he wants to make it you a good house and make you happy. Now, not all guys know how to do everything. They don't know. Not every guy knows everything about plumbing, electrical, telephone stuff, now internet things.
They try
they'll try working on cars, changing your brakes, your oil, and all that kind of stuff. There has become the problem, is that young men nowadays don't know how to do any of that stuff. You know why? You know why they don't know? Because there's no need for them to know anymore. Because women don't want them to do that stuff, because that's patriarchal, right? So we are creating this society of people that can't do anything, rely on everybody to do everything for them. And I hope we can start slowly getting back. And the one sliver of bright light that I see in the distance is going to church and seeing these young kids that are getting married, having kids, and they are having beautiful lives together, right? They are living the epitome of what the nuclear family is, right? They're together. The guy is doing his stuff, his yard work and all that kind of stuff. And the woman she's in charge of making sure the house is decorated and everything the way they want. Not saying that a woman can't change a tire and a guy can't cook a meal. Not saying that. But there are things that we don't want
to see him
and it's always been, a lot of times women are much better in the kitchen at doing stuff, and the guy's always outside doing the barbecue stuff, right? It's just those natural things.
Look, I don't want to be that guy, but except when like when you have professional chefs, they're always men. I'm just throwing that out there, guys. I don't want to, you know what I mean? And as far as the dishwasher, I hear what you're saying, bro. But the reason we invented that is so you can spend less time washing dishes and more time cooking. Because, sandwiches ain't going to make themselves. And it's important. I'm just kidding. Look, man, I've been divorced for over 15 years, and I still have a honey-do list. So don't feel bad, guys. We still out here working.
All right, everybody. Well, before we get out of here, make sure and smash that like button, subscribe to Outspoken, share the show with everyone you know, and hit that bell icon to get updated whenever we upload a new episode. All right, well, don't give us too much hate mail on this one. We always have fun doing these, and we like to see comments. It'd be really good if society would get back to where we're not so darn offended over everything and know that everybody's not being sexist and violating your space every time they do something. Most people are trying to do stuff as being good people, right? And holding the door for somebody is not patriarchal. I don't need to slap whoever thought that up. So anyhow, make sure y'all take care of one another.
Do better, be better.
And as always,
God bless
God bless America.
See you next week.
See you next Tuesday.